My name is Natalie, and I grew up in Joburg, full-blown city girl, even though I'm a full-on tree hugger at heart. You don't always see that in practice, but that's me. I was fortunate enough to have an incredibly active childhood, and that's really what drove me into biokinetics. So from young, I was I walked to and from school, I danced, I played netball, I swam, I was in the athletics team, I boxed, every single moment, every day I was active. And like I said, I was really fortunate enough to be able to do those things. I know many of your children might not have the ability to explore those avenues easily as yet. Well, I'm not sure the degrees, but that's usually the case. And so that's what drove me into biokinetics. I studied at WITS, I did my undergrad there, and then I went to the Sports Science Institute in Cape Town and did my honors, and came back to Joburg to graft, and here I am. I also have a lovely family and a husband that's also a bio, so that's just a little bit about me. And then I thought you might want to know what biokinetics actually is. So the biokineticist is registered with the Health Council, and really what we do is we use exercise and movement as a treatment modality. So that is the form of therapy that I use. I'm using movement and how the body moves as a form of treatment. In my daily work, I focus on improving physical ability, overall fitness, and general health and well-being in all my patients. So a bio, what they would do is they will assess an individual, and then they will prescribe a specific exercise program that you would either do with them or that they would guide you to do on their own, and then monitor your progress. In my history of working as a bio, I've worked across the spectrum in terms of age and condition, and with people with various different injuries and disabilities and diseases. So I wouldn't say that I specialize at all in rheumatoid arthritis or juvenile arthritis, but I have treated many children that have had this condition in the past. So then I thought, it might be helpful to understand the process of what your child would go through if they were to go to a biokineticist. So first up would be the assessment. So if you were deciding to take your child to a bio, they would book an assessment, and I can't stress enough how important it is to have a good history-taking session in an assessment. So that is really my most important factor when I'm assessing someone. I need to understand what the condition is, how long it's been for, all the ins and outs of what they've been through. And so even for you, I sometimes advise people to try and make a little note that you can keep on your phone, or you can store somewhere, even in your handbag, of the progression of disease or the condition of your child from where it started right up until today, all the chronological steps, all the important things. Because sometimes in your assessment, you become quite overwhelmed and you miss really important factors that the therapist could use to help you. After they have taken your history, the bio will then evaluate your child's physical state. So we will look specifically at the affected joints, but then it's also, the reason I love bio is it's quite a holistic approach. So you cannot only look at the specific joint that's involved. You need to look at the entire body, because if you have a pain in your knee, then inevitably it might affect the way that you walk, and that could affect an ankle and the hip and the back and your posture, and all of those things come into play. So everything needs to be looked at during this assessment. But let me just explain, sort of break it down. So one of the first things we look at is joint mobility. So for instance, I'm just going to show my wrist here. If the wrist is affected, I would look at how much your wrist could move in your child. So I'd look at flexion, extension, and then the sideways movements as well. So looking really at the integrity and the health of the joint. I would then also, if sometimes the joint might even be hypermobile in some people. So those are things that I would need to look for. And when I move that joint, is there pain? Is there no pain? Does it feel hot to the touch? Those are things that we would check. After that, I would also look at the actual tissue. So sometimes the joint range of motion or the mobility in the joint is fine, but they may even have like slight contracture, or they might have tightness or stiffness in the tissue that surrounds that joint. And I would do that by feeling the muscles in the area, you know, and that would also guide me as to would this child respond well by having some sort of home massage program, or would massage or physio be a helpful tool for this person? And then I would also need to look at strength and stability. I would look at proprioception. So proprioception it's really a fancy word for these little receptors that we have in the body that send messages back and forth from the brain back to your muscle and or to the joint itself. And if the proprioceptors are slow in firing, then the stability of the joint can be compromised. So there's a whole host of things that I'm looking for in the assessment that specifically relate to the joint. But then beyond that, I would need to look at the child's posture. Posture is really important. What are their daily habits? What is their exercise regime? Are they exercising at all? Are they exercising too much, or are they doing the wrong kinds of exercise? If it's appropriate, I may even ask what their sleep and eating habits are. And I also want you to remember that biokinetics, you know, the assessment, or this might sound really comprehensive, but it's a complementary therapy to everything else that your child is involved in. So this should all be overseen, if you're able, by a rheumatologist or your doctor, and they will send you or point you in the right direction. Or maybe in the session with the bio, they'd say, look, you perhaps need to go see OT first, or do a little bit more work with the physio, and then come to me for slightly more advanced work. Okay, so after a child has been assessed, I then would need to, or not me, but anyone would then design an appropriate program for them, an exercise program. So if you find that the joints are really stiff and immobile, then mobility and stretching would be your primary focus to begin with. And as their range of motion improves, then you would start focusing on strength and stability. You might land up adding in hand-eye coordination. You would look at the major muscle groups, which are the big muscles that we all know, like biceps and the chest and the abdominals. But then there's also tiny little stabilizer muscles that sometimes are better to work with in children that have these conditions, because there's small exercises that we don't normally do, but that are almost easier to do and really, really important for the healthy function of a joint. And then if your child is involved in some sort of sport or takes an interest in a particular type of physical activity, then I would incorporate that functional assessment as well. So, you know, if your child really loves soccer, then during the assessment, I might see how they manage to stand on one leg and kick a ball, or can they jump from side to side? You know, how is this going to help or impair their activity of choice? And then next thing a bio would look at is obviously pain. Pain is a major component with children who have JIA, and the pain itself can often cause limited range of motion or joint immobility, and sometimes long-term physical impairment. So your bio should be able to help encourage certain techniques that can help manage pain. So one of them would be proper body mechanics. So that's where posture comes into play. How is your child standing? How is that joint functioning? Can we adjust the way that they stand or the way that they move to alleviate pain? Joint protection techniques is another really important factor. You know, when they're exercising, they might be doing something that's actually aggravating the joint, and can we adjust that so that they feel better through movement? Relaxation exercises are maybe something that not everyone will be involved in, but even stretching or using water as a modality can help just lower the parasympathetic nervous system. And all that's saying is just help bringing your child into a calmer state so that they feel more comfortable, they feel less pain. And then lastly and importantly is to monitor the progress of your child while they're exercising or through their journey with the bio. The intensity of their exercise needs to be adjusted. The duration, the frequency, and the type of exercise that you're doing needs to be adjusted as your child improves. So as they get better, we need to make the exercises more difficult, more challenging, push them a little bit so that they can get stronger. And in the same token, if they're going through a flare or if they're really not having a good time, then adjusting the intensity there as well. So really softening the exercise or maybe doing it a little bit less frequently. Just listening to the body is huge. We have to, often we ourselves don't do that. So we really need to, with our children, listen to them and learn to find the balance of where to push and where to hold back. Okay, so I hope that's been clear. I've discussed what a bio is and what a bio would do, or what you expect to happen when you take your child to a bio for to treat them with JIA. But I thought maybe I haven't really gone through how bio would actually help your child with JIA. And I can't stress enough how important exercise is for children with JIA. I think that children live in a world where pain can be all-consuming, and they spend so much of their time running between doctors and therapists, and they kind of hold from here to there, and they don't really always get to experience that fun childhood play. And I really do feel that exercise can help so much, because I think they often compare themselves to more able-bodied children, or I've heard them and seen them say those things. And if they can just learn how they can move a little bit better, or they gain that little bit of confidence to see, oh, well, actually, I can do this, and this is getting better, and I am getting stronger, or I can move my arm a little bit easier. That then builds their confidence, as Lara was saying, and it just opens a whole world of possibility for them. Exercise, yeah, it's just unbelievable what I've seen in most children, well, anyone really, but most children and all the children with JIA that I have treated, how they begin to grow in their sense of self and in their body, and their confidence really is huge. It just allows them to engage in everyday activities more freely, which is huge. Oh, I did make a note here that said, it does take time and it does take patience from all parties, and it often can take quite a lot of encouragement as well. At some point historically, I think they thought that no movement was key for someone that was in a lot of pain with their joint, and actually it's the worst thing you could do. Movement is really key to maintaining a healthy joint. The more we're able to move that joint, the more blood flow you're getting to the area, the less inflammation, the stronger the joint becomes. It's really, I actually made a note to speak about an example that might feel relatable for all of us. And that was, I was thinking, this has probably happened to all of us, where you wake up in the morning and you're rushing and you're getting ready for work, and you bump your knee into a table, and you rub it and you carry on, you get in your car and you're driving, and it's not too bad. But by the time you've spent 10 minutes in the car and you get out of the car, your joint is really painful. And it's that's staying static and not allowing movement in the joint that really creates a lot of that pain, because there's no blood flowing to the area. It begins to inflame, it's getting stiffer, and that's often what our children will feel, especially in the morning when they wake up. They have that stiffness because they've been lying static for so long, and that's just a pure example of why it's really important to move. Hi, Lauren.
Nat, sorry. Sorry.
Don't worry. Yeah, so movement really preserves your child's ability to engage in everyday activities and in play, and hopefully in a sport or some sort of structured physical activity that they find they enjoy. The other benefit of exercise is that it really helps with fatigue and pain, obviously. I'm sure you all know that when you exercise, you feel good. So it's no different for children, and it's no different for children with JIA. When we exercise and when we get moving more and more, our body releases endorphins, and that is a hormone that helps us to manage pain, and it also helps us to feel good. So it really is important in times of stress and pain for children to be moving. That said, it is also important to be understanding and patient with children who have JIA, because not every day is a walk in the park. They have good days and they have bad days, and on their good days they want to play, and on their bad days they don't want to do anything. So sometimes it will take a little bit of extra encouragement to get them moving. And as a therapist, I'll always begin slowly and build up, and obviously read the child on the day and the progress that they're making. Excuse me, but I was thinking about this, and I thought there are actually probably quite a few ways that we could try and make exercise more enjoyable for children, and this forms a big part of what I do when I'm working with them. So I'm just going to look down because I've written a few notes here. But the first thing that I thought, if you aren't able to take your kids to a biokineticist and you wanted to work with them at home, is to introduce elements of gamification. So finding ways that you can turn exercise into a game. I mean, today there are apps for everything, so I'm sure you will find an app for this, where you can find a way that they can move by using an app on the phone that encourages some sort of challenge, or they can do it with their friends, and there's a sense of competition, and that can make exercise feel like a game rather than a chore, because often for them it will feel like another chore that they have to do. I also thought that sometimes if we could offer a variety of exercises for our children, they might find something easier that they actually enjoy. Because, you know, you might say to them, you need to move, you need to do a formalized exercise, but they could get a lot of that movement through dance or through soccer or through swimming or through kicking a ball around, and those are all ways that you could get your child moving, and they might find something that they really love that just encourages them to work a little bit harder and to have a little bit less fear around movement. Perhaps even encouraging participation in group exercise or classes with other children that have the same or similar conditions as them. That could help them feel like there's a sense of community, and it's a little bit more social, and they really enjoy moving together. And then positive reinforcement rewards, I mean, that may or may not work for some people, and family involvement. So if you could find an activity that you love doing together as a family, would really be helpful for that child to feel again that, you know, they don't have to sit and color while their siblings are outside playing on a jungle gym, and they could feel really part of a unit, and you could do something really slow, even if it's swimming together every now and again, or you know, you find what works for your family. But I feel like that could really help a child feel more encouraged to move. And then I could end the talk on this note, because this is huge for me, and incorporating playfulness is really important. So in my work with children, sometimes I feel like I could actually throw science out the window and just incorporate play with the children, because if you make it fun and you turn it into a game and they're really enjoying themselves, they will actually want to come back and do their exercises. They will forget that sometimes this is painful. They just enjoy themselves. And sometimes, yes, physical form is important, but sometimes allowing your child to just have those moments of playing freely through movement instead of focusing on, okay, elbow here, shoulder here, you know, all the signs, that doesn't always, movement is favored over form sometimes, not always, but in children who are really struggling with feeling like they want to move. And then I thought lastly I would just talk a little bit on moving when your child does have a flare-up. So often you'll have these times where your child is having a flare-up or they're in a lot of pain, and they sometimes won't be feeling well as well. And it's like a fine border between not rest, which is really important and sometimes needed, but also still encouraging them to move and keeping the joint range of motion going, because you've been working so hard on getting this joint firing, moving through the full range, and the muscles firing. And just one day of bed rest can increase muscle atrophy. And so, you know, you will have, as a therapist, you need to gauge what's the degree of the flare, basically. So if they are really in a lot of pain, they have a fever or their joints are very hot, then yes, maybe rest is the best thing at that time. But if they are still able to move, but they are sore, then you can adjust your exercise program and work on just gently mobilizing the joint, or stretching the muscles around that joint, or stretching the whole body and getting them to move other areas of their body. And again, that helps to just release their endorphins. That stretching and sometimes even isometric exercises. So iso means same and metric means length, and that's just a type of exercise that you would use where there's no movement in the joint, but you're still contracting the muscle, can help minimize pain. So there are ways that you can help to reduce pain while you're working through working with a child. But it really is quite a fine line between encouraging movement and seeing when they really can't do anything, and resting. So like I said, gentle range of motion exercises can help. Isometric exercises can help. If you were really flaring up, it might be advisable to go back to a physio if you did have access to a physio, and they would then sometimes use manual mobilizations or a TENS machine, which stimulates the muscle. You have little stickers basically with electrical points that stimulate activation in the muscle, and that can also help with pain. Infrared light can help. Icing sometimes can help the joint if it's very inflamed. And if the muscles are feeling achy, then using a little bit of heat can also help on that area. So maybe a warm bath sometimes if it's more in the muscles or they're feeling achy in their body. If the joint is very inflamed, then ice on that particular joint is helpful. And then adaptations and modifications. So again, it comes back to that education and reinforcing, educating the child on how they can hold their body, what they can do to try and minimize pain themselves. And also I forgot to mention, as a bio, I mean, often in your case, when it's such a specific condition, the parents know more than the therapist. But if need be, then also encouraging and educating the parent as well, so that they know what to do, or that they feel safe and comfortable to help their child when they're struggling with a flare-up. And yeah, that's all I have in terms of information for now. But I thought I would end with a poem, going back to school here. But I really love this poem, and it's by Khalil Gibran, and it's called On Children. So, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable.
Thanks, Natalie.
It's a pleasure.
That's beautiful. And little did I know that tonight would end up in poetry. So thanks for bringing us the science and the poetry in what you do. I must say that I'm not the patient, and I've watched what you do with my son, and I've learned a lot of things from you. But one of the big things that I've learned is to try and be a little bit more fun. And it's very hard, but I've tried. So, I mean, my kid doesn't want to do stuff with me that he'll do with you. There's no way. I'm just the mother. But I think I have made some improvements and adjustments myself, using a little bit more fun and a little bit more play. So from my point of view, that's been very helpful.
I don't think any mother is fun. I mean, if it was my kids, it wouldn't be fun with me either.
Yeah, true. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions, and what I'm going to ask you to do is to please ask your questions yourselves. So there are some in the chat box. Joazelle, yeah, there you are in the room. You've asked about consulting a bio versus a physiotherapist. So won't you tell us your concerns and ask your questions, and then we'll go to Yvonne after that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Yazal, and our daughter is 4, turning 5. She was initially diagnosed with hypermobile spectrum disorder, and later a bit of an atypical presentation of juvenile arthritis. She's currently on methotrexate. We've just switched over to injections. She's doing well with that. And we've definitely seen improvements, but she's been with a physio. It was actually our very first point of call, because she used to W sit, and I was a bit worried about her core. I work with developmental conditions as well, so I kind of picked up quite early that there was a little bit of muscle tone. So yes, we were initially with a physio from, we say she's about 2.5, and we've we absolutely love our physio. And I've had 1 or 2 people mention, biokineticist, and I think maybe it's just my own lack of knowledge of what would be different, because our physio does do a lot of the physical exercises, and again, a lot of the checking in with the joints in the body, and the hypermobility, and muscle strengthening, and the exercises and the fun, and trying to do all of those things. So where would it make sense to also consult a biokineticist, or when would you move from physio to biokineticist, or include both? Or so that would be my question.
Thanks, Yazal. So if you are really happy with your physio, and your physio is incorporating exercises, then, and you feel like your child is improving and progressing, obviously, with children so young, trust is also a huge thing. So she's obviously been going to this physio for a long time, and she really trusts and understands her. Sometimes that cannot actually be the best thing, because then they stop listening to you as well.
Takes it like, so it doesn't push herself as hard.
Yeah, so physios are qualified to do exercise as well. So if you find that she's really is pushing your child in terms of how much loading she's involved with, especially, does she still exhibit hypermobility?
Yes, no, she's very hypermobile.
Yeah, then exercise.
8 in Brighton.
Okay, so exercise should be the primary thing that she needs to be doing. A lot of loading, a lot of strengthening, and even postural strengthening. It's difficult to say, because obviously I don't know your physio.
Yes.
I would advise to maybe do a 1 session with the bio, and see if the 2 modalities complement one another. If you find that they're doing exactly the same thing, then there's no real need to be seeing the bio as well. But if you find that maybe there's something else that your bio is offering that's a little bit more, no, I don't want to say advanced, but it's like second phase. So often physio will be primary phase and then bio will be a little bit more second phase. Then I would say, yeah, try a session and see, or try 2 to 3 sessions. And like I said, if it's very similar, then stick with what feels right. And if you feel like she or he is adding to your child's progress, then I would definitely complement the therapies.
And utilize
And yeah, it's sometimes difficult to pull away because you feel comfortable with that person, but then maybe you could move a little bit more to the biokinetics work and then go back to your physio whenever there's any pain or really acute issues. Then that's where she would do really well with your child.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
On that, Kath, what is your experience there?
So if I look back, Ella did lots and lots of bio and physio. My experience was that the physio was great for in the moment specific issues, and bio was fantastic for everything that came thereafter. So for the long-term stuff, for the repair work and getting back to where Ella should be, where she would have been, but for the arthritis, the bio was amazing. So bio for us was always we spent more time in bio than we did in physio. Physio was more just after a flare or a very particular issue, so more acute, and then bio was more chronic, and that worked the best for us. But Natalie's raised such really excellent points, and I think her the balance that she talks about is so important, because if your child is mentally not ready to, or not in the right headspace to be participating in exercise, if they're resisting, if they're pushing against it, if they're just not motivated enough because maybe they're a bit moodaless, or they've just had enough, or they're just sick and tired of seeing therapists, then it's okay to take a step back in that moment. And I think one of the things that I learned looking back is I wish I could go back 10 years and tell myself it's okay, because it is a collection of therapists and doctors, and they're all putting quite a lot of pressure on you, and they're painting quite a dire picture sometimes, not necessarily. And you feel that you have this tiny, tiny window, and you've got to get everything done very quickly. And if you don't, it's going to be a total disaster. Sometimes you need to take a little step back, and then you need to go back to therapy when the moment is right. You can't force a child to participate in any kind of physical therapy if they're not in the right frame of mind. And unfortunately, this is the hardest part for me, was that they almost have to buy in order for it to be really useful. And I think Natalie, to what your comments about making it playful, and sometimes it's about the fun and not so much about the perfection of the movements, that stuff is really, really important. It's one thing if it's your own body and you find the motivation to do the exercises. It's a whole different thing with a child. But in answer to your question, bio was more long-term stuff.
Okay, thanks, Kath. I think that a lot of us are stressed out a lot of the time, so it's very difficult to make things fun. And also being stressed, it's difficult to make kind of a clear assessment sometimes of where we are, where our children should be, what they can do, what they can't. So that's, very difficult. And having, you mentioned trust, Natalie, having somebody like a bio or a physio who knows the child over the long term, where there is a trusting relationship, it's great to have an outside perspective, especially an outside perspective that you see once a week or once every 2 weeks, because we see our kids every day. There's a question from Yvonne, who's got a problem with her mic on her computer. So I'm going to ask it. She said also that they were referred to a physio. Do they rather start with a bio? Her son is starting grade R next year and stressing about all the activity that they do at school. Maybe Yvonne, while Natalie responds, could you maybe tell us a little bit about your son? We know his age, but where is he at? How physically able is he? And then after that, we can go to any other questions that the rest of you might have.
I think she said her mic isn't working, so she might have to send the message.
Yeah.
Oh.
So if you could answer in the meantime, maybe she'll pop a
Okay.
note in and tell us
Yeah, it's
which joints are affected, etc., etc.
It's tricky to say. I might need to see that first, because it depends how inflamed is he, and has he seen a physio at all previously? It's very mobile. His knees are mostly affected. Cannot make them completely straight. I would start actually with physio. If he's struggling with, so are his knees very mobile, Yvonne, or is it just no physio? Okay. I would start with physio. So this is just what I'm thinking. I would start with physio, and I would be upfront with the physio in terms of your funding, and ask them to be really informative and helpful and show you what you can do at home. So maybe 1 to 4 sessions if you can afford that, and start mobilizing that knee joint. So start encouraging him to get his knees straight as much as possible. There's something called the torture pillow exercise that people after surgery would do, where it's very simple. You rest your foot on the table, like most of us do at the end of the day, lying on the couch, put your foot up on the table, and you just let the knee hang straight. And it can become very painful if you have stiffness in that joint, but you do it as much as you can until you can't manage the pain anymore, and then you take it off. And that is a regular exercise you could encourage your son to do, to start encouraging that stretching of that posterior capsule behind the knee, and that will help to straighten his knees. That's something that the physio might do. But if you went to go see him or her, you could ask them to show you how do you massage the tissue. You can start doing a daily practice for your son without having to take him consistently to therapy, and you will definitely start to see improvement in that joint range of motion. And even they should give you a few exercises as well. Start with that. Start with that, and then if you can take him to some bio to get some more advanced exercises, and you could follow the same protocol there. It is very helpful to have a regular practice, even if it's just for a month. If you can manage to do 1 month of regular sessions, so you can get a gauge of what you can do at home, get your son a little bit more comfortable with movement in that way. And also, next year is quite a way away. So I think you can start using the next 6 months to either go between seeing someone, even if it's every second week, but definitely start with a physio, get them to teach you what to do. And then thereafter, if you see your son is responding, then start with the bio as a long-term plan, even once a month, just to show you what you can do and carry on advancing him. And yeah, maybe he's very shy. Oh, it is really challenging. I had a little boy that came to me with hypermobility syndrome earlier this year, and that was the first time I've had a child so averse and resistant to me. I was actually quite shocked after the session. This child was also incredibly shy, and his condition really affected his tummy, and so he didn't want to move. He didn't want me to make him squat. And that first session was a disaster. My assessment with him was really a disaster. I asked him if I needed to leave the room so he could talk to his mom, and so I had to leave the room. And then the next time he came to see me, he was like a different child. We did a little bit of movement, we played. So maybe you'd be surprised if you go to the right person, they might really make you feel comfortable, make your son feel comfortable, and you might actually be surprised by his response to someone who's trying to help him. So I think start somewhere, take him to a physio, maybe find where do you live? Are you in Joburg? Or wherever you live, find someone who can recommend you a direct recommendation of someone who's gentle and good with kids, and start there, and then just take it one step at a time. And I'm sure he will manage next year at school.
Thanks, Natalie. So, Natalie, you've dealt with quite a lot of JIA kids, which is quite rare to find because there aren't so many JIA kids around. So, you know, maybe, as you said, with Yvonne, is to access the support group. We've got a WhatsApp support group, and to ask if there are any physios in the area who do deal with children and who do have more of a gentle approach, and who possibly have dealt with some of the JIA kids living on the East Rand in Joburg. Maybe that could be a good way to start, is to get a referral of somebody who your kid could end up building a trusting relationship with. Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions? So you can just off-mute yourselves. Yeah, Jozel, we can't hear you. Thank you.
Yeah. I was that person who forgot to off-mute in the Zoom. There's always that one. It was me. So I just, since there's still a bit of time, it would be great if there's any other, I know obviously every child is unique and every profile is unique, but if there are any other general kind of fun tips or experiences or things, it's, as you also said, Lauren, it's so wonderful to have someone who has this wealth of experience and knowledge. If there is any other, from your experience working with JIA, for me personally, it's the hypermobility and JIA combination, also makes it tricky because you might find a person who has knowledge about one or the other. So that's also where we've had our, like the physio we have is very rare because she works with young children with hypermobility and JIA, so it's difficult to find that combo. But if there are any other tricks or things that you can share or advice, it would be great in terms of practicalities day to day that we could do. That's helpful. Fun ideas or things that's worked for you.
Kat?
I have one to add, and it's just to put on some music while you're preparing dinner or at the end of the day, and just dance. Doesn't, you know, but do it with your children. That you dance as well. You dance. So a lot of this has to be modeled as well. And then just have fun. You put on your favorite music, and then we used to have it that everybody got a turn and you got 3 songs, and then you play your favorite 3 songs, and then the next person gets a chance, or you do it one song, and everybody gets a chance to dance to their favorite music. The other thing it does is it highlights in all of you areas where you need to work on maybe your flexibility, or so you introduce sort of a dance move that involves touching your toes, and then you can't touch your toes, and that's something that you're going to work on. So then you say to your child, my thing for the next 2 weeks is I'm going to work on my flexibility, and every time when I dance, I'm going to try and touch my toes a little bit further. And it just makes it just a part of how you live, which is then a part of how your family lives, and you're all aware of your physical where you want to be and where you currently are and what you need to do to get there. And then we used to, I didn't end up looking at YouTube videos of people that did these incredible things with their bodies. And we were like, okay, that's what we're going to work towards. But it doesn't have to be in proper clothes outside. It can literally just be in the kitchen around the dinner. And while you're preparing dinner, dancing competitions between my 2 children also worked really well. That kind of stuff where it doesn't have to be formalized. It can just be fun while you're doing dinner. That worked really well for us, just to get moving.
I just want to add, we do dancing as well. And one of the suggestions our physio made is to also incorporate scarves. So playing with a scarf, because it lifts the arms up that they have to wag and flag. And for Phoebe, that was one of the things that she needed to also do to strengthen the shoulders. So that incorporating scarves in the dancing and flags and props has also been nice.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing a really good job already, Jozel. If I could give you one other thing, I love the dancing. I think even just to de-stress is good to dance, just by us. But often I found like any sort of rebounding material is quite fun for kids. So sitting on a ball and just bouncing on a ball, and then there you can also have your scarves and lift and play around with scarves, or having a little mini trampoline, anything squishy, even on your bed. You can go and jump around on your mattress, or sit and bounce on your mattress, or just anything that there's a little bit of, and that soft squishy surface is often quite nice for them because there's less impact. So because of that absorbing effect, that shock absorber, there's less impact, and they can move for a little bit longer if they're on one of those kinds of surfaces. Okay.
I'm laughing because our kids absolutely do use our bed as a trampoline, and it's like, you have a trampoline, but now I get why they prefer the bed. That makes sense. So thanks for that. I'll be more empathetic to that from now on.
Taken off the no list.
Okay, thank you. We'd love to hear your questions. Anything about sport? Any questions about sport?
I have a quick question while we're waiting for another one.
Sure.
Natalie, I wanted to ask you if you had any insight, or you could share any advice on how to access PMB covered bio. Is it included in medical aid stuff that they pay for yet? I remember it wasn't before, but I don't know if that's changed.
I think PMB is not, but you can, if you are part of medical aid, they often will have a form that you can fill out to motivate for extra sessions. So that's the way that we do it. So once someone has finished their amount of sessions, then they will give us this form that I'll have to fill in a whole lot of answers to their questions, like how have they improved, how long have they been coming to you, how long do you think that they need to come to you? And then if there are some supporting documents from doctors or other therapists that they're involved with, that can often strengthen their case. And then they may say, I'll offer you another 10 sessions. But as far as I know, it's not included in PMB.
Okay. So the PMB stuff is pretty much anything that's appropriate by an appropriate specialist. So it just has to be motivated for.
Okay.
So I know, for example, so it's not in the treatment basket, but neither is clinical psychology, for example, but you can motivate for, I think you get, I don't know exactly how many, I think it depends on the medical scheme, but you get a certain number of sessions that you can motivate for. But it is interesting for us to test that. We've done a lot of work with medical aids and getting them to pay for stuff that they've routinely rejected. And we've had fantastic success in not just treatments, but also therapies. So we must definitely sort of test that and get a motivation for a child that needs occupational therapy, biokinetics, and then can't get it, and let's just see if we can motivate it and get it through.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, any questions from anybody else?
I'll add more questions if no one else.
Yeah, I also have a question or two, so I'd love to ask one after you, Joelle, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to in general ask if there was anything around, specific things. It's maybe a very vague question, but specific sports that you have found have been better or worse, or more high risk versus low risk, but I suppose it's also profile and child that would inform.
So yeah, in the case of your child with hypermobility, I wouldn't necessarily encourage her to do gymnastics or yoga, even though she may, as she gets stronger, be able to handle herself. Unless she becomes really, really self-aware of where her end range should be, then I'd say, okay, as she gets bigger, yoga might be a good fit. And it's funny because you would probably think, wow, she would be really good at gymnastics or really good in yoga because she can move so far, but that would end up becoming more of a problem for her, for instance. And then in general, for kids where their joints are really stiff and uncomfortable, swimming or any water sports can be quite nice for them because, again, it's low load in the water. It's really tricky to give a broad-based answer because it really will be individual to each child, and it would be difficult to say soccer is the best sport and then you have someone who can't stand kicking a ball, but they may actually manage to play tennis even though that's high impact. So it depends on how they improve, and if they get to a point where they're in regression and they're managing really well, then the the floor is really open for them. But in the early phases where there's quite a lot of pain, then the low load exercises are good, like cycling and swimming and yoga in general, or Pilates, even those kinds of rehab based exercises are really good for them. Pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Tishan, Annalise, Lydia, any questions from you, Lauren? You're welcome to just off-mute yourselves.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Hi, it's Lydia. No, it's I'm Yvonne's mom and Kianko's my grandson, so I'm just listening to help
Okay,
my
yes, I
daughter to
remember.
assist with everything.
Okay, okay, great. Thank you.
Also nothing for me, but thanks very much. It's been really interesting.
Okay, so my question was going to be around sports, because that's something that I find parents ask when I go out and chat to parents. Parents and kids are quite scared to engage and play sport at school. What would your kind of guideline be? You know, as a parent of a child, you can't tell where that child really is that day, and it can change from day to day. What would your guideline be? How would you say, you know, how do you tell if it's appropriate to play sport that day or engage? You know, in the kind of the range of where the child might be.
I think in those cases, it might be helpful to develop a personal relationship with the coach, and ask them to also be a guide or an observer to see how your child is managing, and whether or not that you can often see when someone is engaging in movement, if there's pain in the face or in the way they hold their body. And as a coach that's overseeing this, they should recognize that. And you could ask them to pay special attention to your child, just to make sure that they're not pushing themselves when they shouldn't be. But I like to use a scale. So if you could try and teach your child a scale of pain, so you could say, here's a scale of 0 to 10, and you teach them just in every day, you start getting accustomed, the both of you, to what a 0 pain feels like versus what 2 pain feels like versus what 7 pain feels like. And if your child starts to get used to this, and they feel that they're in a 6+ out of 10 pain that day, then I would say, okay, maybe don't engage in the sport today, or just do some of the movements that you're able to that are not overly affecting the joint, you know, if it's not a match, for instance. But if they are in 5 and under pain, and they say, okay, well, they have a 4 pain, yes, they can go and play, and they might then learn that actually I was in 4 pain today and I'm feeling worse, or later on or the next day, even though I've iced. Then you know, okay, well, maybe 4 out of 10 is still not okay for them to play. So it's going to be kind of learning how to gauge your own body, but that takes practice and presence and encouragement from all parties.
Yeah, and that's difficult enough as it is as adults. Like you said earlier, we don't listen to ourselves, so we've got a double listening job to do. And then last quick question before we close out. I'm terrified of trampolines, but you mentioned trampolines. I mean, like I can a Pilates ball or jumping on the mattress I can still live with, but trampolines terrify me.
Yeah, so
trampolines.
I think often we imagine, or we see our kids flipping and jumping as high as they can and landing awkwardly on her foot. But they will sort of slowly feel their way out. So a little trot on a trampoline can work, or little mini jumps, or running round and round the trampoline, or, you know, just bouncing without having to always lift off. So you can always climb onto the trampoline with your kid and hold their hands and like just gently bounce, or sit on the trampoline and bounce, or then go onto your knees, or go onto all fours, or chase each other round and round. Like there's so many ways you can play on a trampoline without rebounding up and down. But they might find that as they gain confidence and strength, and that joint, especially if it's a knee joint, if it's able to then like get through that nice range of motion like that quite a lot, it's actually really good for them. I would just encourage them not to do the big jumping and flipping early on. And landing on heads. Yeah.
Okay, great. So it's 1 minute past 9. Thank you so much for your time. Natalie, your insight is invaluable. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone did as well. The session has been recorded.